Tensions between the United States and Iran are rising again. Military moves and counteractions remind us of a familiar pattern. Major crises rarely start with war. They begin with instability. Supply chains slow, energy prices rise, and transportation falters. Life doesn't collapse overnight, but certainty fades. Store shelves remain, yet choices shrink. Food is still there, but often not long enough to last through extended uncertainty. In these moments, it's not food itself that vanishes first, it's shelf life. Fresh produce becomes scarce, convenience foods spoil quickly, and what you buy today may not help tomorrow. History shows that in prolonged crises, people rarely starve immediately. They falter when supplies don't last. Today, we're not talking trendy foods. We're looking at 12 foods that endure, keeping you sustained when the system around you falters. 12. Potato flakes. Some foods last for a long time because they're rare or hard to come by. Others last simply because they're uncomplicated, and potato flakes fall into that second category. In a prolonged crisis, the real question isn't just whether you have food, it's whether you have enough fuel to cook it. When gas, electricity, or firewood starts to run low, meals that take hours to prepare can quickly turn into a burden. A pot of beans might need several hours, a hearty stew requires steady heat, and suddenly cooking isn't about convenience, it becomes a survival challenge. Potato flakes last because they demand almost no cooking at all. Just add hot water, and they transform into an instant source of energy for your body. No long fires, no careful planning, no extra resources required. Their longevity comes from the way they're made. Almost all moisture has been removed, leaving nothing for bacteria or mold to grow on. They also contain no oils that spoil quickly, unlike many other foods. When kept dry and sealed, potato flakes can remain edible for years, far longer than most fresh foods you might be used to in your kitchen. The biggest mistake isn't buying them, it's storing them incorrectly. Once the packaging is opened or exposed to humidity, even a small amount of moisture can drastically shorten their shelf life. But in a dry, airtight, stable environment, time nearly loses its grip. On days when your energy is low, your body is drained, and the thought of standing to cook a meal feels overwhelming, potato flakes step in. You don't need an elaborate dish. You need something that can turn into energy within minutes. That's the moment when potato flakes truly shine. Because in a crisis, what keeps you going isn't always a full, hearty meal. It's a meal that arrives just when your body is on the verge of giving out. 11. Iodized salt. In most crises, the question isn't just whether you have salt, it's whether you have the right kind of salt. Plain salt lasts indefinitely. It doesn't spoil, doesn't rely on electricity, and doesn't depend on supply chains. But iodized salt carries an extra, often overlooked value. It supports the body's internal functions. Iodine is essential for keeping the thyroid healthy, and the thyroid controls the pace of almost every process in your body. When fresh food and seafood vanish, natural sources of iodine quietly disappear too. The thyroid influences up to 60% of your body's energy metabolism. You might not feel hungry, but over a few weeks, your body slows down. Fatigue creeps in, tolerance to cold drops, and even small physical efforts take longer to recover from. One viewer shared their experience. "We had enough salt, but not iodized salt. The effects don't appear overnight, but over time, energy declines, even when food intake remains the same." Salt also has practical uses in a crisis. Just a small pinch can help preserve meat or vegetables through dry curing, extending their shelf life when refrigeration isn't an option. When your body loses water, adding a little salt to clean drinking water helps maintain electrolyte balance, slowing exhaustion. Being a mineral, salt's longevity is unmatched. It can last for years without losing its value, even when other foods have disappeared. Historically, salt even became a medium of exchange, not because it was rare, but because it was incredibly versatile. It preserves food, supports bodily function, and in iodized form protects the endocrine system over time. So ask yourself, as the world around you gradually changes and resources dwindle, what kind of salt are you keeping in your kitchen? 10. Egg powder. In most crises, protein doesn't vanish because it's rare. It disappears because it simply doesn't last long enough. Meat spoils in just a few days without refrigeration. Fresh eggs can't be stored for extended periods, and milk relies entirely on functioning supply chains. When electricity fails or transportation breaks down, familiar sources of protein don't disappear over months. They can vanish in a matter of days. The real danger isn't immediate hunger. It's the slow weakening of the body even while you're still eating. Carbohydrates might still be available, but without adequate protein, recovery slows. Muscles fatigue faster, endurance drops gradually, and while you might push through the first few days, eventually your body no longer bounces back the way it used to. This is where egg powder becomes invaluable. In its dried form, it doesn't rely on refrigeration, electricity, or any stable system. Kept sealed and dry, egg powder can remain usable for months, or even years. While fresh eggs last mere days, one viewer described their experience. We weren't short on food, but we lacked what actually helped the body recover. We still had plenty of carbs during the extended power outage, but each day, our bodies weakened and struggled to recover even after the simplest tasks. In a crisis, protein does more than satisfy hunger. It preserves muscle, supports recovery from strain, and keeps the body functioning when everything else is uncertain. Sometimes survival isn't about having a full meal. It's about having the strength to recover, day after day, as tomorrow still arrives. 9. Nutritional yeast. In a prolonged crisis, it's not always energy that vanishes first. Sometimes what slips away is clarity. Not because you're starving, but because your body starts running low on the micronutrients that keep your nervous system functioning steadily. Vitamin B is one of the nutrients most likely to decline when fresh foods stop appearing regularly. Not because it's rare, but because it's found in fresh vegetables, meat, milk, and other items that disappear quickly when supply chains are disrupted. At first, the effects are subtle. Concentration dips slightly, mental fatigue sets in sooner, and reaction times slow in situations that demand quick thinking. Over time, however, the combination of prolonged stress and vitamin B deficiency can seriously impact mental energy, emotional stability, and the ability to think clearly. In a crisis, this isn't just uncomfortable. It can lead to poor decisions, lost focus, and slower responses when you need them most. This is where nutritional yeast becomes invaluable. In its dry, sealed form, it can last a long time without electricity or refrigeration, while supplying essential vitamins such as B1, B6, and B12, along with a modest amount of protein. These nutrients help the nervous system maintain steady function, even when your diet becomes repetitive and limited. Many people who have lived through prolonged shortages report that they still had enough calories, but gradually lost the mental clarity needed to use those resources effectively. In a long-term crisis, calories keep the body moving, but vitamin B keeps the mind sharp. Just 2 to 3 weeks without enough B12 can reduce focus and cause nervous fatigue, even when you're still eating enough food. Sometimes, survival doesn't depend on how much food you have. It depends on whether your mind is sharp enough to make the most of what's left. 8. Dried seaweed. Iodine deficiency doesn't make the body collapse overnight, but over time, it slows everything down. Not because you're starving, but because your internal systems lose the balance needed to function properly. One person who experienced a prolonged power outage shared their story. At first, they just felt unusually tired. Then came the unexpected chill, feeling cold even when the weather hadn't changed. Weeks later, their body seemed unable to sustain energy the way it once did. This isn't about a lack of calories. It's about a repetitive diet slowly reducing natural mineral intake. When seafood disappears from your meals, iodine levels quietly decline. Over a few weeks or months, the thyroid may begin to slow, and when the thyroid slows, the rest of the body follows. That's where dried seaweed becomes essential. It's not about filling your stomach. It's about small amounts of iodine and trace minerals that support hormonal balance when your diet loses variety. In its dried form, seaweed is light, durable, and doesn't rely on electricity or refrigeration. When stored sealed and dry, it can last long after fresh food has disappeared. In a prolonged crisis, the challenge isn't always running out of energy. Sometimes it's the imbalance in your body that prevents it from functioning normally. Food keeps you alive, but minerals keep you steady. And often, survival isn't about how much you have. It's about whether your body still has the balance to use what's left. If you found this helpful, press like and subscribe so you don't miss future content. 7. Bone broth powder. In the early days of a crisis, most people worry about energy, how to keep functioning when food becomes scarce. But as time stretches on, the question shifts. It's no longer about whether you have enough to eat. It's about whether your body is still strong enough to endure. Carbohydrates help you get through today. Protein helps you recover over the next few days. But when your diet becomes repetitive for weeks or even months, weakness doesn't come from hunger. It comes from the lack of nutrients that maintain the body's internal structure. At first, the effects are subtle. Recovery from familiar tasks simply takes longer. Then, soreness appears without any injury. Joints feel weaker, and endurance gradually drops. That's when minerals start to matter. Bone broth powder isn't a quick source of energy. It won't fill you up instantly, but it delivers calcium and essential amino acids that support bones, joints, and connective tissue, the elements that help the body maintain strength and durability over time. In its dried form, when stored sealed and protected from moisture, bone broth powder can last for years without relying on electricity or refrigeration. As fresh foods disappear, natural sources of minerals decline too. One viewer shared, "After a few months, it wasn't about eating enough. It was that my body stopped recovering the way it used to." In a long-term crisis, energy helps you survive today, but minerals help you endure for months to come. Sometimes survival isn't about making it through tomorrow. It's about whether your body still has the foundation to avoid gradual collapse over time. 6. Lentils. Lentils are a lifesaver when water and fuel start to run scarce. They don't need soaking, cook faster than most other beans, and can turn into a complete meal with just a little water and minimal cooking time. Under normal circumstances, that's simply convenient. But when every cooking session has to be carefully considered, convenience becomes survival. One person who experienced a prolonged gas shortage shared their story. They still had beans at home, but after a few days, cooking them became a challenge. Every turn of the stove meant using fuel that could have stretched meals over the days ahead. You have food, yet your body grows tired because you can't use it freely. Over time, waiting for a dish that takes longer to cook stops being an inconvenience. It becomes a drain on resources. Lentils cook about 30 to 40% faster than many other dried beans, helping reduce that cost. Not in money, but in the energy and resources needed to turn your reserves into meals. After weeks of careful rationing, that difference becomes crucial. It keeps meals going even as other resources slowly dwindle. Lentils aren't the only long-lasting food, but they're among the few that move efficiently from storage to the table without straining the system around them. What matters isn't just how much food you have stocked, it's whether you can actually eat it without weakening your ability to sustain the days ahead. Sometimes, survival depends not on the amount of food, but on the cost of using it. 5. Ghee. Ghee delivers dense, lasting energy without needing refrigeration. Fat is one of the body's most efficient sources of energy, but most fresh fats, like butter or lard, spoil quickly, especially when electricity or stable storage isn't available. Ghee changes that equation. During its preparation, water and impurities are removed, which makes this fat far more stable over time. In its pure, sealed form, protected from moisture, ghee can last for months or even years, without relying on refrigeration. This isn't just about storage. One person who endured a long winter with limited electricity shared that what drained them most wasn't a lack of food. It was maintaining warmth and overall energy. At first, they noticed only slight shivering. Then came the struggle to stay warm, and over time, the body burned calories faster just to maintain heat. In such conditions, energy isn't only for activity, it's essential for staying warm. Ghee provides a slow, steady source of fuel for the body, helping to preserve warmth and sustain energy when fat in the diet is limited. It's not a main meal, but even a small amount can make a noticeable difference. In long-term crises, the challenge isn't always about eating enough. Sometimes it's about whether the body can maintain energy and warmth to keep functioning. In cold or harsh environments, energy from fat doesn't just move you forward. It helps prevent gradual exhaustion. 4. Canned coconut milk. Canned coconut milk doesn't just provide energy. It helps your body make the most of the food you're eating. In times of scarcity, the challenge isn't always whether food exists, but whether your body can absorb it effectively. Many essential vitamins require fat to be properly absorbed. When your diet becomes repetitive and low in stable fat, your ability to use the nutrients you do have declines, not because the vitamins aren't there, but because your body lacks the conditions to utilize them. I remember a time when most of my meals were based on dried foods and stored vegetables. Everything seemed adequate on paper, yet I didn't feel restored. Only after adding a simple fat source like coconut milk did I notice a difference, not because I ate more, but because my body began to absorb nutrients more efficiently. In canned form, coconut milk doesn't need refrigeration or complicated storage. When sealed, it can last long-term without relying on electricity or modern systems. Beyond energy, it supports digestion and helps your body make the most of fat-soluble vitamins, critical in situations where nutritional variety is limited. This isn't just about food, it's about efficiency. Food provides resources, but fat allows you to actually use them. Have you ever noticed the difference a stable fat source can make in your meals? 3. Dried mushrooms. Dried mushrooms aren't just food. They're a way to make a simple meal feel more satisfying. When fresh food starts disappearing, the challenge isn't just nutrition. It's that meals gradually become monotonous. Flavors repeat, textures repeat, and eating starts to feel like a mechanical habit. At first, it might seem minor, but over time, prolonged monotony can weigh on morale. When every meal feels the same, sticking to regular eating habits becomes harder. One person who relied on dried food for weeks shared that they technically had enough to eat, but the sameness of every meal made eating feel like a burden. Dried mushrooms provide a small but meaningful change. Just soaking them in water is enough to use them, no refrigeration required. They offer minerals and vitamins that often decline when fresh foods are scarce. But their true value isn't only nutritional. Mushrooms bring flavor, texture, and variety, helping meals feel a little closer to normal. In scarcity, that small shift can make a big difference, keeping eating habits stable instead of draining energy mechanically. Food maintains the body, but variety sustains morale. Sometimes what keeps you going isn't just the quantity of food. It's the sense that meals still offer a familiar, comforting experience. 2. Chia seeds. Chia seeds help the body retain water when conditions are unstable. In many periods of scarcity, the problem isn't just food, it's dehydration. When water is limited, the body feels more than thirst. Fatigue sets in faster, energy becomes harder to maintain, and digestion struggles, even if calorie intake hasn't changed. At first, the effects are subtle, a lingering dryness, or quicker exhaustion after normal activities. Over time, though, when the body can't hold the water it needs, performance drops, even if you're still eating enough. Chia seeds have a unique property. When soaked, they form a natural gel that slows absorption, helping the body retain hydration and maintain digestive stability. One person who had to ration water for weeks shared that while they weren't short on food, the ongoing dryness and fatigue made daily activity harder. Only after adding chia seeds to their meals did they notice a difference. Not because there was more water, but because their body held on to it better. Losing as little as 2% of body water can reduce endurance and concentration. On top of hydration, chia seeds also provide omega-3s and fiber, supporting digestion when diets become monotonous. In scarcity conditions, the ability to retain water isn't just convenient, it helps the body continue functioning under tough circumstances. Food gives energy, but water lets you sustain it. Sometimes survival depends not on how much water you have, but on how much your body can hold on to. If you found this useful, like and subscribe so you don't miss the next tips. 1. Gelatin. In the first weeks of a crisis, the body can keep going on energy alone. But as time passes, a new challenge emerges. Not a lack of strength to work, but a declining ability to recover after effort. Prolonged stress, repetitive diets, and the absence of natural collagen from fresh foods gradually reduce the body's capacity to repair itself. At first, it's subtle. Joints feel stiffer after normal activities. Then, digestion becomes more sensitive, and over time, connective tissue recovers more slowly after each day under pressure. Collagen makes up about 30% of the body's total protein. One person who endured continuous labor with limited rations shared that while they still had the energy to keep going, lingering soreness never disappeared. not due to injury, but because the body lacked the foundation to regenerate. Gelatin addresses this often overlooked factor. In dry form, when sealed and protected from moisture, it can last long-term without refrigeration. When consumed, it provides components that support joints, connective tissue, and digestion, helping the body recover after prolonged stress. In scarcity, recovery isn't a luxury, it's essential. Energy helps you survive today, but recovery ensures you don't weaken tomorrow. Sometimes survival depends not on how long you can endure, but whether your body still has the ability to repair itself over time. In prolonged crises or war, it's rarely the staple foods that disappear first. It's the foods that maintain stability in the body. You can survive a few days on simple meals, but without minerals, fat, protein, and micronutrients, long-term survival becomes impossible. Preparation isn't about fear. It's about understanding that stability isn't guaranteed. If you found this list useful, share the video and let us know which items you've started storing. And don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss future content.